Good morning, economics students of social issues. It is June 25th, and we're already in week 2. So for week 2, continue to plug along with your Connect assignments and Smart Book and the quizzes. Again, you're allowed unlimited attempts. What I will do tomorrow is I'll go in and take out your best score and post that. I've been able to post some scores already for people that have done some items, and I might do some more. If you earned 100%, I'll post it early. But if not, I'll wait till after midnight and do it sometime Monday. Do send me an email if you have any questions. Some of you have, so that's good. This week, we're going to get into chapter 20 and 24, so we'll have readings with that. And I'm not sure if I mentioned, but like I said, next week we get a little bit of a break. So, it'd be nice to have that break, but just keep plugging along. You can work ahead if you want to. Start looking at some of those other smart books and quizzes and readings if you want to do that. Save yourself a little bit of time towards the end of the course. But chapter 20 is rather brief. You're going to look at the idea of aggregate demand, aggregate supply, and really kind of begs the question about how do we help stimulate growth? Obviously, in the United States, we're one of the leading economies in the world. Do we still have issues? But you know what? The issues that we have are much different than other third world countries that have a much greater level of poverty. The chapter does go into the Gini coefficient, talks about, one of the problems the United States will be criticized, especially as a capitalist country, and not everybody shares those viewpoints around the world. We definitely see different viewpoints of economic styles like Vietnam, Cuba, communist countries, some that have adopted Western-style economies, but the dispersion of wealth and income in the United States has a wide range. What I mean by that is that if you were to break down the income of the top 20%, they probably control about half the income in the United States. And when it gets to the wealth, the numbers get even bigger. It kind of begs the question, why isn't there more of a outrage against this? But in the United States, still those that are at a lower level are still doing better than many around the world. It doesn't mean it's not an issue, and that's one of these issues that we look at in economics. And again, just a reminder, when we post the forum discussions, there are going to be some controversial topics, and the main thing we just want to do is be respectful to our peers and their normative analysis, that is the opinions. We look at the economics, there's positive analysis, that is the facts, the figures, the things we can kind of predict in theory, and this is the opinions. Well, this is what we should do. Like you've seen a lot of states transition to legalize marijuana. There's been less resistance to that now, and they've kind of looked at all the economic data, and is it worth it to keep all these people in jail and criminalize them for marijuana? And the bottom line was they said, hey, based on the empirical data and the demand for it, we're not going to recommend it, but we're not going to make it as illegal as it used to be. So change in cultural beliefs on things like that. And then that's where the opinion comes in and changing the laws. And the art of economics is putting those two things together. So that's kind of what I'm looking for in those forum discussions is, what did you find out about these things? Do you have any particular opinions about them? What type of adjustments should be made? And those are the things you're going to look at these weekly chapters. There's no one perfect solution, but what do we think the best thing to do is for everyone in society? With that, also, it's going to talk about some of the things why certain countries struggle more than others to try to gain economic power, stability, and job growth. But obviously, the lack of the ability to read for a lot of individuals, the low levels of education. You got to remember in the United States, we have some very good universities that are well known throughout the world. We invest a lot in human capital. Others, just political instability. You see kind of what's going on in Russia. Even Ukraine, you got to remember there was a lot of corruption in Ukraine before the war. And that can also cause, difficulty to gain stability, to get the economy to grow. Chilean economy would look at such things as unemployment, GDP, inflation, but GDP is gross domestic product. And that's the main thing that we're looking at to provide those jobs, but try to keep that where inflation stays in check. The other thing you got to remember, a lot of the infrastructure, do you have different systems in place? to promote trade within the nation or within the world. And then finally, I just kind of think about, the institutions that are in place. The United States, we were once considered like a third world nation, prior to the 1800s. It was a lot of capital from Europe that was brought in. It was probably the time of the Transcontinental Railroad that really took our nation off. And after World War II, we became the superpower in the world because we were unscathed, from World War II for the most part. But you got to remember things like the Fed, our government, the institutions, the regulations really do help keep those markets stable, and those are important things. And not all countries, especially third world countries, have these things and have the history of these things. Okay, so for chapter 24, you're going to start looking at some things dealing with externalities. An externality is like a bright product. If I don't take care of my house, I let the paint peel off, I keep Camaro on cinder blocks in the front yard, I never mow the lawn, I have trash everywhere, my neighbors hate me. Okay, the reason they hate me is because I'm affecting their property values. Okay, even though they've done nothing, they get to experience this. Well, with pollution, that's a good example of an externality. It can be either through land, it can be through air, it can be in the sea. And we know this is becoming more and more of a problem. There's just a lot of people, a lot more people in the world, a lot more demand for natural resources. It kind of goes back to chapter 20. It's like, how are we really going to help all these people rise out of poverty? Because once they do rise out of poverty, they're going to want to live like everybody in the United States too. So it creates a lot of byproducts. I watched a special on 60 Minutes about a month ago, and it was really talking about how we're making the earth extinct, and are there too many people? And the scientists said yes, that basically there is. There was a famous economist, Robert Malthus. He was a classical economist. I call the Chicken Little economist, and he was worried about population is growing at exponential rate, which it was, and food was growing at an arithmetic rate. We're going to run out of food, but what he failed to take into consideration is technology. And that is one thing we do in economies. If something gets expensive, we will move to electric cars if gasoline gets too expensive. But again, how we measure these things, the textbook reads about the social benefits and the social cost. And markets don't always factor in these externalities. And sometimes they can be positive externalities, like you all going to education. Going to college is a positive externality. We should probably subsidize those things or give lower interest rate loans to try to encourage those things. But the government will always often intervene at times when they feel that something is not ideal in a market, that there's a market failure, that the ideal level of production of a particular good or service is not in existence. Because of these social costs or social benefits that are not accounted for. So you're going to read a lot about that. And let's see if there's anything. Oh, the hot one, obviously, right now. I live here in Missouri. I don't know if all of you live in Missouri, but getting close to 100 degrees yesterday, at least when I was a kid, I do not remember this in June. So I tend to agree with the scientists that, we definitely see warmer temperatures. And probably a lot of this is due to byproducts of carbon emissions, the quality of the air. They say now it's not even safe to go outside anymore. It's very difficult to breathe for some people. And this trend is only going to probably continue. But, even in the Paris Agreement, to try to come to some resolution about reducing carbon, it's very hard to control because you can't control everyone or countries, and it's expensive to switch to different types of fuels, whether it's solar or hydro, and even the question, should we go back to nuclear, is that still safe too? But obviously, if we don't do something about it, as we keep fouling our own nest and making things worse, it's going to get more and more difficult for individuals and the health of individuals, and even potentially the disparity in incomes of individuals and wealth. So, all right, and you're going to talk about some different techniques and policies that have been implemented, such as cap and trade, just putting limits to how much you can produce. And there can also be subsidies if you want a certain behavior. I know right now that we have the tax subsidy on the electric cars. I think it was $7,500. You still have to personally think about, hey, it's a $50,000 car. It's worth the subsidy. You got to do the math to make what's the good economic decision. But regardless, it's trying to change behavior. So anyway, that's it for this week. So if you do have any questions, do email me. But I said is just keep plugging along, jump in early to the McGraw-Hill Connect, get those done. I'll try to have everything graded by Monday. Not as much this week without the forum discussion, but take care and have a great week.